Welcome to Africa. Just as her wildlife and her weather don't seem to be able to be tamed, neither can her orchids. This is Ansellia africana, and let me explain to you what I mean by this. Ansellia africana can be a relatively easy orchid. It's fairly easy to grow, and with the right conditions you can get it to flower without too much problem. But to get those flowers to last a long time can be problematic for some people. We should be able to get our Ancellias to flower for up to 8 weeks. So if that's not happening for you, then this is the video you need to watch. Firstly, we'll go through the basic culture sheet on how to look after your Ancellias so that they're going to grow well, and along with that, how to get them to flower. Then we'll go through how to make sure that we get those flowers to last long enough, and a little bit of post-flowering care. And all of this together will make sure that you have amazing Ancellias for years to come. Ancellias are really hardy orchids. They grow relatively easily and they accept quite a wide variety of different climates. As long as you've got humidity levels anywhere from around 40 to 70%, that's ideal for them. If your temperature ranges from anywhere from about 15 degrees Celsius all the way up to 33 degrees Celsius, that's perfectly fine. They do accept winter temperature, drops down to, as long as there's no frost point, they're generally okay. And they do like to get lots of water during their growing season, as long as their roots dry out quickly. This is going to be a very important part. They have big fleshy roots that do all the absorbing of the water and nutrients, and these need to be able to dry out relatively quickly after watering. So the media that you're going to be putting them in is preferably an inorganic media. So something like lava rock, broken shards of pottery or bricks. Stone even is a very good media to grow them in. This allows for fast drainage of that water and allows for lots of air movement through into those roots. Remember, with Ancellia, they get two different types of sets of roots, two different types of roots. Firstly, there's those big fleshy roots that they use to do all the absorbing of moisture and nutrients with. And the second set of roots are all those fine hair-like roots that stand up out of the media. Those are there to catch debris, to catch those falling leaves and whatever else is around that can then decompose slowly and feed the plant. So this actually makes these Ancellias magnets for fungus, but not just any fungus, mind you, for those mycorrhizal fungi. And they are the ones that decompose that material that's fallen from the trees and caught in between those roots, those root hairs, and that's what then feeds the plant itself. Those nutrients are then leached out and into the roots. So these root hairs that stick up don't do any absorbing of any moisture or nutrient. They're just basically there to catch any of that falling debris. But if you're growing them in an indoor situation or an artificial situation where you are feeding your orchid with lots of nitrogen, then you may not see these root hairs develop at all, because they generally only develop in nitrogen deficient environments like they would have out in nature themselves. As soon as you are feeding with high nitrogen feeds or feeds with a lot of nitrogen in it, you probably won't get any growth of these hair-like or needle-like roots. But then as soon as you stop feeding with nitrogen, it realizes it's a nitrogen deficient environment and then pushes out these roots so that it can catch falling debris so that it can feed the plant. With Ancellia, the regions that they come from generally have distinct wet and dry cycles. They generally have a wet cycle, which is generally their growing cycle, which is generally from spring through summer, and then they have a dry cycle from autumn through winter. And this is going to be important for your plant because this is when they go into a dormant state. And if you start watering too much during that dormant state, this is when you're going to land up with problems. You'll land up with rotting, those big fleshy roots, especially because your temperatures are now low. There's less evaporation of the water happening, so your roots are going to stay moist for too long and it will rot your roots. Remember, they are fungal magnets. So if you're keeping them in damp, moist environment, you know you're going to have serious fungal problems, not only from those mycorrhizal fungi that may over-proliferate, but you'll probably get other pathogenic fungi attacking your plant too. So that's something to always be careful of during that winter cycle or that dormancy cycle. And these guys, they like lots and lots and lots of light. They generally come from deciduous forests where they only get a very light leaf covering, and they're getting lots of light coming through those leaves. They generally grow high up in the trees to try and get to as much light as possible. And in winter, they'll often get a lot of extra light as those leaves all fall off the plant, and your orchid is then exposed to almost direct sun during that winter period. So all of this is going to ensure that it can produce enough energy to produce all these beautiful flowers. It also helps dry out the root volume, give it that little bit of extra dryness that it needs, that rest that it's going to need to produce flower spikes for it to mature up so that the flowers can then be produced. What is going to be more important than cool is dry. So if your winters don't get too cool, make sure you are ensuring that it stays very much on the drier side. Of course, we don't want those pseudobulbs to wrinkle. So what we're going to do is during that winter period, we're just going to mist the root volume. We're not going to soak it or dunk it. We're just going to mist in and around the root volume to ensure that our pseudobulbs don't wrinkle. And that's only if you need to. Otherwise, you can just let it be throughout that winter period. Remember, it's going to need between 4 and 6 weeks of that dryness for those flower buds to start initiating. And for an orchid with pseudobulbs this size, that's not really a long time to stay dry for, because they do hold a lot of moisture in them. So remember, just mist around those roots during winter, only if you have to. Don't feed at this point at all. Remember, they are pretty much dormant plants at this stage, so you're just causing problems if you are starting to feed at this point during those dry periods, because you'll end up with a buildup of salts, and without the watering, you're going to start burning your roots. So now that we've got our orchid growing well and it's just starting to push out those flower spikes, and we want to make sure that we can keep those flowers for as long as possible, because remember I told you they can last for up to 8 weeks. One of the reasons it's going to be able to do that is because not all the flowers open at a single point. Each individual flower is going to last between 4 and 6 weeks. So as a couple of them fall off or dry out as they get too old, you still have buds available on your plant that are still going to open up. And that does not mean when your flower spike has finished flowering, you must immediately go through and cut it off. Don't do that. Rather, as with Phalaenopsis, leave it until it dries off to a completely dead branch, because they can reproduce new little sets of flower spikes and produce new buds off nodes along your flower spike. So rather let it be, and you could perhaps get that little bit of extra bonus out of your plant too. Because remember, they do produce these branching flower spikes. So that's just one little trick. What about the others? An important part is keeping your temperatures cooler at the period of the flowers. The more heat that you give your plant, the shorter life period or lifespan these flowers are going to have. So if you are able to keep them in that sort of 15, 18, possibly up to even 22 degrees Celsius, they'll last a lot longer than they will do in higher temperatures. So keep them away from hot breezes or anything like that, perhaps from a heater or something. Keep them away from those sort of warmer conditions, and then you'll be sure to keep those flowers to last longer. Also, during the flowering period, you can keep your humidity at between 40 and 50%. This is just to ensure that you're not getting too many fungal attacks on them. As soon as your humidity levels start getting higher, you can start getting flower blight and things like that you have to be careful of, because that will also not only make your flower look unsightly, but also shorten their lifespan. And along with that, keeping your plant in humidity levels of between 50 and 70% is going to be ideal for it. If your humidity levels drop too low, the dehydration can affect the flowers and cause early flower drop. Also, if your humidity levels are too high, what's going to happen is you'll probably get flower blight. You'll get that botrytis, flower spotting on your orchids, and that will also shorten the lifespan of the orchids other than just being unsightly. And along with those humidity levels comes circulation. Air circulation is going to be very important. Just a gentle breeze through them is going to help keep those fungal spores at bay or those fungal attacks. So it's going to make sure that the humidity doesn't sit around the plant and condense and cause problems. If you've been growing your orchid indoors all the time with those specific high light conditions and you now have blooms, try and keep that light condition as stable as possible. Don't move it to somewhere where the light conditions are suddenly going to be a lot brighter or it's going to get some direct sun, because that also is going to shorten the lifespan. The direct sun from coming in the shade will then start bleaching the flowers and of course cause them to fall off more easily or fall off quickly. And if you move them to the dark, pretty much the same thing's going to happen. Your plant is going to go into shock and it will probably drop those flowers pretty quickly. So try and keep your light conditions stable. Also is going to be important is keeping your watering at this point stable as well, because you've already started to water as soon as you've seen those blooms and those new shoots coming up. You've just started to water as spring comes in, and you want to keep your watering conditions stable over that period. Don't start ramping your watering up until the flowers are finished, because any of these changes can signal different things to your plant, and your plant will react by dropping the flowers and continuing growth or any other number of things. So best to keep the conditions stable for your plant. But of course, if you've been growing these outside in the sun, your flowers themselves are probably going to be more accustomed to that direct light, but still probably they won't last quite as long as they will as if they are in a little bit of dappled shade. And again, just to remind you, when dealing with spent flower spikes, don't cut them back all the way. Just cut off those parts that are dead already above any nodes that you may see along the flower spike itself, because those, remember, those little nodes could still have a little bud point that could then produce some more flowers for you. And then of course your post-flowering care. This is the time to come in and of course any of those dead flower spikes, if they've gone brown and finished, time to cut those off. Go through your plants. If any of these pseudobulbs have completely dried out and died, gone brown and desiccated completely and are just basically dead sticks, then that's the time to cut them off. Don't cut them off at any other point, because for one, they're still feeding your plant, they still have energy reserves for the growth. Not only that, these old back pseudobulbs can still flower. Your old pseudobulbs are going to reflower for between 2 and 5 years. So the first year, perhaps you're not going to get flower buds or a flower spike off your initial growth. Sometimes it needs to harden off for that first year and the second year, and then you'll only get those flower spikes coming off of it. Some of them do flower off that first year's growth, but a lot of them will only flower off the second year's growth. But those back bulbs can then flower for another 3 years afterwards. The second year, you can be almost sure to get flowers. The third year, you can very possibly get flowers. And the fourth year, you're less likely, but you still can. Your pseudobulbs generally only last for around 5 years on your plant anyway. Your leaves, if you're looking after your plant well, should last you between 2 and 4 years. They can drop off at any point, especially if your plant does go through a seriously dry period. It will then lose some of its leaves, especially off the older pseudobulbs. The first year, it's going to flower right off the tip of your plant, and there afterwards, it's going to flower off your alternating nodes, off the alternating sides. So often the older the pseudobulb is, the further down the flower spike will come off the plant. So remember, those back bulbs, those back pseudobulbs, can flower for up to 4 years. So don't cut them off too soon. Also remember with these plants, they are far more floriferous the bigger the plant gets. They tend to want to flower more as the plant gets bigger. Not only because you're going to be getting more flowers off the old pseudobulbs, but for some reason they just like to produce more flowers as a bigger clump. So patience is going to be important to get the best out of your plant. And with that, happy growing and enjoy the flowering. For more information with a basic culture sheet on Ansellia africana, check that Buy Me a Coffee link in the description box below. Ed posts up a lot of articles there all the time, and there's some amazing stuff about the Ancellias and other orchids too. And thank you for watching. If you found any of this information helpful, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and that notification bell, bing bong, to be notified of all our upcoming content so you don't miss out on a thing. Help us grow as we help your orchids grow.